All right, so now we're going to start to work on setting up our database. So we have a lot to do in this section. We need to create the database. We're going to import some data through a tool called Compass. We're going to create our connection configuration, create our models, and then start to fetch our data into our application rather than using the JSON file that we're using right now. All right, so we are using MongoDB, which is a NoSQL database. It's also called a document database, and it stores collections of data. And the data is stored in something called a document that's very similar to a JSON object or a JSON array. So if you've worked with JSON, then you're going to have no problem really understanding how the records are stored. It's much different than a relational database. Now, we're going to be using MongoDB Atlas, which is the cloud version, and this is the more common way to do things these days, is to host your database in the cloud. And that means that you don't have to install anything locally on your machine, aside from Compass, which is just a client, a tool that we can use to work with our data. But yeah, so when we deploy, it makes it a lot easier because we don't have to, install MongoDB on our server or anything like that. So you're going to go to mongodb.com and just sign up for an account, and there's a free tier, so you shouldn't have to pay anything for this. Although if you're creating a production project, you should definitely, pay for your services because you're going to go over the free tier limits, but you should be fine for the course. So I already have an account created. This is one of my many accounts that I have, and I just wiped everything out to start fresh. The only thing that has been done is there's an organization created. So basically, after your first login, it'll ask you to create an organization. As you can see, mine is Travesty Media, and then you're going to create a database cluster. Okay, and then you want to add a user, and then you want to add your network access, meaning which IP addresses can access the database. So let's start off by creating our database cluster. So here you'll see there's a package called M0. That's the free tier, so we'll choose that. And then the provider, so you can use AWS, Google Cloud, Azure. We're going to stick with AWS. Region. I'm on the East Coast, so this looks like the closest to me. And then cluster name. For that, I'll just call this, I'll just keep it at cluster 0, that's fine. And then let's click create. I hate these things. So stairs. All right. Now it's going to ask us to create a user for our database. This is different than your MongoDB user. This is specifically for your database. So I'm just going to do something simple because I'm not going to keep this. Just do Brad123 for the username and Brad123 for the password. Okay, so I'll create the user. Make sure you click that Create User button and it shows the user. And then here is where we want to access our database from. So in this case right now, we want to access from our local environment, and you're going to want to add your current IP address. And it'll let you do that just by clicking, although it's already added. And I don't really care if you guys see this because it's a VPN. So once that's done, we'll just finish and close. And let's see, I'm going to hide the quick start. We don't need that. And then go to overview. And from here, you can actually view your data, although there's a desktop client called Compass, which is much better, and that's what we're going to use to directly access our data. But I do want to just create the database name in the cluster. So if we click Add Data, and we go to Create Database on Atlas, for the database name, I'm going to call it Property Pulse, and then we'll just create a collection for now. With MongoDB, you don't have to go in before you create your application and add all your collections and all your field like you would have to do with a SQL database, which is really cool. But for now, I'm just going to add one collection called properties. And then let's see, you can cap it. We're just going to leave this. Yeah, we're just going to leave all this and then click Create Database. All right, so now if we had data, that would show here, and we can filter it and so on. But again, we're going to be using Compass for that. But at least we know we have our property pulse database. Now what we need to do is get our connection string. So if we go back up here to database and click on connect, you'll see there's a few options here. In the next video, we're going to get the Compass string, but now I just want to get the string for our application so that we can just store it in our environment variables. So let's click on drivers, and right here, this is going to be the string. So I'm going to copy this. Obviously, yours will be something different. And then we're going to go into our application, and in the root, we're going to create a file called .env. Okay, don't forget the dot. And then let's say Mongo, we'll call it MongoDB underscore URL or URI. Okay, and then I'm going to set that, I'm going to paste that in, but we do have to change a couple things here. So one, we have to add the password, so replace that angle bracket password with whatever your password is. And then if we just leave it as is, it's going to create a database called test, and I don't want that. I want to use the property pulse database that we just created. So right here, after this slash, we're going to add in property pulse. Okay, and then that should be all set. So I'm going to save that. And actually, there's a couple other things I want to add here while we're in this file. So we're going to have a next underscore public. So if you're using any of this on the client side, then you want to prefix it with next public. And this is just going to be the domain, so it's fine. So I'm going to do next public domain, and we're going to set that to HTTP localhost port 3000. And obviously, when we deploy, we're going to set this environment variable to something different on the server. But for locally, this is going to be what we'll use. Now I'm going to copy that down, and I'm also going to create one called next public API domain. So right here, let's say underscore API domain, and that's going to be localhost 3000 / API. So that's really all I want to add for now. We'll go ahead and save that. And then just to test to see if that was actually stored and we can access it, let's go to our home page, so app-page.jsx. And this is a server component, right? It's not, there's no use client. So I should be able to console.log and then process.env, because that's how we can access those environment variables. And I want to say MongoDB underscore URI, and we'll save that and go back to the home page here and reload, and we should see it down in the server, and there it is. Okay, so we're able to access that environment variable like that. So let's get rid of that. So now that we've created our database, we've stored our connection string, in the next video I want to set up Compass so that we can import some demo data. Basically this same type of data that we have in the JSON file. In fact, we'll use that JSON file for the import.